In his own miraculous ways, the women leaders across the 36 states and FCT, as well as the zonal women leaders, had requested for audience to see Mr. President, first to congratulate him on his election and to share their own ideas with him as to what we could do differently that will impart more on women, not only in terms of women being appointed, but also in terms of social policies that are specifically targeted at women, including rural women. They also used the point to thank the president for consistently expressing his confidence on the Nigerian woman by assigning them to what you might call the most strategic ministries in his government, both in the first term and now in the second term. I mean, I can't think of a ministry more central to governance than the Ministry of Finance. And that has been in the hand of women. And of course, they also acknowledge the appointment of a woman as Minister of Transport or Transportation, and a woman as Minister of FCT. And who else appreciate the pain of people who are in trouble than women. And we also have a woman who's in charge of humanitarian affairs and other issues. Of course, there are women who are occupying executive positions as DGs in some organizations, a director. At least I saw one or two who were there, even though those are not at ministerial level. But as they say, Oliver Twist will always ask for more, and the woman felt that commensurate with their voting strength, because the truth of the matter is women vote much more than men, whether in the villages or in the rural area or in the cities. And they sought the understanding of Mr. President to consider more women as we approach the season of, appointing people to various boards at both part-time and executive level. And the fact that even from the introduction of women, many of them, most of them have even more qualification than many of men. So there's no job available in Nigeria that women cannot do. And I think they made those points eloquently well. But it also coincided with the judgment of yesterday by the petition, presidential election petition tribunal at the Court of Appeal, in which all the 5 justices unanimously endorsed the election that was conducted by INEC, that declared the president as a winner, and found that in truth and in fact and in law that the president won the election without any question. To use the word of the presiding officer, he said, from all that was before the court, the president was not just qualified, quoting him, he was eminently qualified. So it was coinciding with today, the women naturally used the opportunity to share the joy and to congratulate the president for the affirmation of his of the judgment that is obviously in his favor and in our favor as a party. So I think these are the issues, and the president, spoke very well. He expressed his confidence on the Nigerian woman, and that is reflected in his choice of ministries to be manned by women. And I remember him jocularly saying that nobody can manage family finances more than a woman, which explains why we have a woman as Minister of Finance. So it was a very, very interesting meeting. The other one you want me to talk about is yesterday's judgment. I think as a party, and I said that yesterday, we are excited at the outcome, not because we have at any time expressed or had any doubt about the fact of our victory. I mean, these are facts that are verifiable. In 2015, the gap between the president and the then president was less than 3 million. This time, it was close to 4 million. So the gap is even wider. And I attended some of these court sittings, and it was clear that PDP just seek to blackmail every institution so that their candidate can become president, even if it is not the will of the Nigerian people. And when a political party and a presidential candidate reduce election matters to social media speculations and quoting sources that are laughable, even at beer parlor conversation. I mean, when you bring a young Yahoo man from Kenya who admitted before the court that he is not certified by any institution as an expert in ICT, and he told the court, and it's on record, that the much talked about server, where they already concoct figures even before the election took place, and that he got his fact from what he called facts.lie.com. Even as media, if you want to report a serious story, you are not going to say that your source is one social media, one server, whose actual owner you don't know, and so on and so forth. And the young man was at least honest enough to admit that when other cross-examination, whether those figures could be manipulated or altered depending on who wants what. And he said yes. So why will the presidency of Nigeria be at the mercy of unverifiable, inconsequential, speculative so-called server? And he agreed that he didn't have any access to INEC server, and information was not from INEC server. Let's take our country serious. We can't sit down here, no matter how, even if you consider yourself a whiskey in ICT, and say that an election going on in UK or in US or in Japan, that you are using your server here based on the current level of ICT to arrive at election result and use them as the basis for your contestation. And number two, I think we should all be serious. Which elsewhere in the world, is there any one of us? Because for me, I am more interested about facts sometimes rather than law. Because law may provide legality for an act. That act, legal as may yet be immoral in the heart of very ordinary people. But in this case, we have both in law and in morality or common sense. Is there any one of you here as media practitioners who will question the academic qualification of any Nigerian who has attended NDA, rose from a rank of lieutenant to second lieutenant to captain to major to lieutenant colonel to brigadier general, and then becoming a major general, being a former head of state, addressing Nigeria in English, and somebody who is sane is asking question whether such person is sufficiently educated to govern Nigeria. And I ask you, because sometimes I don't want you to just report what we say. I need you to evaluate what we say. How many professors are president around the world? How many PhD holders are president, whether in US, in UK, in France, in Germany, in Japan, you name it. Intellectual, this thing is a different field. Leadership ability is another. And you all can read that constitution by yourself. I have read it. And it simply says, basically, if you can read and write. Because intellectual, your paper qualification sometimes says little or nothing about your leadership ability. And then the second issue, they canvass, and they made a lot of weather out of it, heavy weather out of it, is whether Muhammadu is the same thing as Muhammad. Exactly the same way that in my own election in 2016 or 2012, my opponent then, PDP, went to the tribunal to say that Aliyu, A-L-I-U, which is how Aliyu is pronounced in Edo State where I was born. But moving to Kaduna, you know that in the north, the same Aliyu is spelled as A-L-I-Y-U. And somebody wanted a governorship election to be cancelled on the basis of this accent and spelling which different part of the country uses. Even children know that that is a joke. And PDP make heavy weather whether Mohammed is Muhammadu. Do you really think that the leadership of Nigeria should be defined and the court of justice, and I emphasize justice and of law, we reduce the issue based on this. And then you talk about lawful votes, that there were manipulations, etc., etc. We have about over 1,700 polling units, and PDP called 5 witnesses only who presided or who were agents in 5 polling units in the attempt to discredit the election. And of these 5, 3 of them admitted that in the unit where they were agents, that they voted. The others were, I was told, I visited 5 units out of a ward with maybe 200 units, and you call 60 witnesses. Even if you do just simple arithmetic, 60 divided by 37, if you include FCT, means that you have less than 1 witness per state to speak with authority on what happened in each state. I have gone through an election petition process, and I know that it's not a matter of wishful thinking, it's not a matter of I heard. It's not a matter of I think. It's about I saw, and you produce the evidence. I went through it. Even at the governorship level, the kind of what PDP did was nothing that could have possibly given them. But I think the problem they have is that, let me be more careful. Some people made money from certain persons with certain promises. Because don't forget, for the first time in Nigeria, a candidate is saying he is going to privatize NNPC, even if they will kill him. Is it that hard? That haven't you done privatization before? Was somebody killed? This was not meant to appeal to you, the ordinary Nigerian. Do you have money to pay for NNPC? Regardless of what we think about efficiency or inefficiency of NNPC, and indeed like any other federal government parastatal, truth of the matter is they were speaking to Western interests. When PDP says no, they are going to devalue the naira, they will float the national currency. Whose language is that? I mean, let's be honest. That is the typical language of the IMF, or if you like, international finance capital. And for those ones who disapprove of President Buhari's commitment to what he proudly, and I believe rightly so, described as homegrown economic solution, check around the continent. Each time we adopted Western prescriptions, we were worse for it. When I see those people now, which you people don't always remind them, when I see a man, I respect him, Mr. Chief Olufalaye, as secretary to government, Oda Babangida, we were told that the solution to our problem is structural adjustment. And the key element in that is that we should float and devalue the naira. And we're lectured about the beauty of devaluation, that it will mean that imported goods will be priced out of our reach, and it will curb us of our appetite for imported goods, and we will export more goods. For people like you, whose only business is watching, monitoring, and storing information, has that happened? Are we not much more dependent now? From 1 to 1, today we are 1 to 350. So once you resist those Western prescriptions, you have a problem. I also know, and I spoke to some of the foreign observers and even some diplomats, and I said, it was very clear from their own biases that Nigerian foreign policy and some of our choices in terms of who we lean to get what done are issues that borders them, which they will not put on the table. So we as a party, we are confident. If it is within the Nigerian law for PDP to go even to the World Court, we will meet them there. The Supreme Court is Supreme Court of Nigeria. It's not Supreme Court of PDP or of APC. And even they are governed by law. And their business is to interpret or reinterpret the evidence that was before the Court of Appeal. They are not at liberty to introduce new issues, nor can they bring in new witnesses. So if it is what I heard yesterday, which I believe you also heard, thanks to the media, most Nigerians were detained for 8 hours, listening, even if you don't see the voices, but listening to the argument of the judges, one after the other. And I think, even though initially we thought it was getting longer, but we realized that they tried to deal with each of the issues raised, even the one that you and I as a layman we consider inconsequential. They deal with each of them, trash them, and arrive at a conclusion. So I don't want to sound arrogant. Yesterday, I said, I hope that this whole contestation was about Nigeria, who actually won the election. And both parties are committed to building Nigeria. It was just about who should be given the key. Now, this has been resolved. And it is time to queue behind the winner and move on. After all, our winner is the best example that losing one election does not tantamount to the end of your political life. He lost 3, and today he's president. So, but when I see the arrogance with which they pronounce, and they bring what I call television lawyers, who pronounce with some managerial finality as if they were judges, even before, without any evidence before them. Let me now say authoritatively, we are ready to meet them. President Buhari is ready to meet defeated Atiku Abubakar at the Supreme Court, and the All Progressive Congress is ready to meet PDP at the Appeal Court, and Oshiomhole is ready to meet my brother Secondus at the Appeal Court. And he will take second, and I will take first, inshallah. Thank you very much.